So this segment is about how we're going to package that victim using an implement and then use an alternative means of egress. So if we have windows accessible in a room like this, we've either entered this room through vent, enter, and search and located that downed firefighter based off of his good CAN report or Mayday report, or our interior RIT search team has made their way to this door. They've done their primary search or their tick search and they've located the victim through audible pass or through visual identification or manual identification. As soon as they identify him and they make that decision to utilize alternative means of egress rather than retracing their steps, they need to assign that third search man to clear out that window, get the sash completely out and removed, and communicate to exterior crews that we're bringing the victim out of the window. That will clue in those exterior crews to get their ladders thrown, get bodies in position down there so that they can safely and effectively manage that firefighter as we transition him from the interior to the exterior. For a civilian or someone that's not geared up in turnout gear and pack straps and all those other grab points, it's really imperative that we have an implement capable of manipulating that victim, not just from point A to point B on the ground, but also to get them up on the steps or out of a window. These two windows that you can look at in this room are very non-standard windows. They don't meet with modern day codes. This is an older constructed home, and typically the windows we're going to deal with are going to be easier from the perspective of height. They're going to be a little bit lower, but they're going to be more challenging from a perspective of width. A standard size window opening is not going to accommodate this type of room to manipulate that firefighter or civilian victim in and out of the window. The first technique we're going to go over is a one-man pop. We're going to utilize the implement that we've been using throughout all of the packaging components, the 2-inch by 20 or 22 foot webbing. We've drugged the victim to the wall, and now we need to get the victim up in a seated position and progress towards the wall so that his back is as close to the wall as possible. Our rescuer, Bobby, is going to come into view. He's going to straddle the victim. He's going to get his right hand cinched down in between the webbing and the victim's torso. He's then going to get his left hand into that same area. He's going to lock that webbing down by biting it back down on itself, get both of his feet under his body, rear end down, back straight. He's going to drive straight up, and he's going to use his pelvis and his knees to get that victim shifted up towards that wall. The higher the lift, the better the shift. Once that victim's in a good seated position, he's now ready to transition to the pop. At this point, Bobby's going to free up one hand, put a bend in the knees, get his foot under the victim's foot, and drive that victim's leg towards the wall. Then he's going to do the same thing with the other leg. Now Bobby's going to rock back and forth, and on his third rock, he's going to drive his pelvis forward, much like the body mechanics of swinging a kettlebell. He's going to drive that pelvis forward and pull back on the webbing strap, which is going to bring the victim into an upright position. As soon as the victim pops up, Bobby's going to drive one knee to the growing area of the victim to make sure that he can stabilize or capture his vertical progress against the wall. Go ahead and pop him, Bobby. Once the victim's in position and his knees in his crotch, Bobby can now work one hand down towards the victim's lower torso and use the wall or the window sill as a fulcrum point to articulate that victim out the window. In this application, the victim's coming out head first, bottle down. The receiver on the window is going to manipulate the victim to help coordinate this effort. One of the really big advantages of using that length of webbing strap is that we have an additional capture point or safety on the victim, whether it's a civilian or a firefighter. So as the rescuer transitions the load of the victim out to the tender on the ladder, he's going to work the lower legs down so that that rescuer can get his hand under this individual's rear end or in between their legs and on their crotch. As that takes place, the rescuer is going to make sure that he's bringing the webbing across the top side of the windowsill and driving it down towards the ground. That's going to create a friction point or an additional assist as this victim goes to ground. If the rescuer were to lose that victim, our rescuer could grab both sides, put two hands on that webbing, push straight down to the ground and lock it in place. Go ahead and drop down, Bobby, and lock that victim's movement. Just like such. Now, when we have a downed firefighter, we don't always have to use the webbing implement for all these techniques because we have the availability of pack straps. But it's important that you understand that the pack straps require a lot of cinching to get them to perform in the same fashion as the webbing strap. So if we're going to do the pop technique utilizing just the pack, it is imperative that we cinch his pack straps down as much as possible with our hand in place prior to manipulating those legs and actually popping him up.
You count up.
Ready? Go. At this point, one rescuer keeps the victim's upper torso pinned on the fulcrum. The other rescuer works on lifting the lower torso. As soon as you get that victim going back the other direction, you're going to be okay. It's important to note that all of the aspects of this pop technique have the victim's back oriented towards the wall. That is imperative for you to keep that victim upright when you're utilizing that fulcrum on the window. If you have the victim oriented towards the wall so that he's going out belly first, as soon as you lose contact with that fulcrum, the victim's just going to crumble back down onto the ground. They're locking in their cinch strap as a secondary safety. They're working together to make sure that they get the victim oriented how they want and on the ladder, and the victim's going to progress down the ladder. This next technique we're going to go over is called a Superman. We're going to show it to you utilizing the implement of webbing as well as the pack strap. It's imperative that you understand that the webbing is always going to work on a civilian, but it may be quicker at times to use existing materials like pack straps on a downed firefighter. So with the webbing implement, we've drugged the victim to the wall. Once the victim's at the wall, we're going to apply our suitcase technique. So we're going to open up the webbing, drape it over the victim's torso, roll the victim over so they're in the prone position or on their bellies. Each rescuer is going to find a handle. They're going to do a ready with a response command of ready, and then on go, they're going to keep their feet under their body, back straight, bottoms down. They're going to pull that victim all the way up, and their objective is with one momentous move to get that victim's chest up on the windowsill. Again, we're using a fulcrum principle. So as soon as that victim's torso is on the windowsill, we can work our way down to the victim's legs, lift up that victim's legs, and start to feed that victim out of the window and work with our rescuers on the ladders. Now at this point, they're going to make sure they choke up so they can get maximal lift. So hands go through the webbing all the way, and then they start wrapping. Ready?
Ready?
Go! As soon as the victim's chest is on there, we have that fulcrum ability. We can angle that victim, feed him right out the window. This is that same Superman technique utilizing the pack and not the webbing implement. So when the firefighters approach him this time, they're just going to flip him utilizing a cylinder, put hands at top and bottom of the pack itself on each side, are ready, go. We're going to lift, again, place the torso on the fulcrum.
Ready? Ready. Go, go.
This last technique we're going to do utilizes a Denver flip. And we're going to talk about how we can utilize the webbing implement and integrate it with the pack frame, where we may not always be utilizing the webbing to lift, but we're utilizing it to do a stabilized or controlled lower. So if you have a second floor window or below on a split level, you can very easily use this segment of webbing to control the victim's descent down to the ground without ever utilizing a ladder or having to have a ladder thrown. We would obviously prefer the ladders be in place and this just be a secondary safety, but in this application we're going to demonstrate this being the primary tool of choice. So for this Denver flip, we've already got the victim rigged. We drugged him to the wall so that his head is oriented towards the wall, and once he's in position, we're going to alter from utilizing the webbing to the pack. So we're going to take this webbing strap, we're going to drop it down into this victim's crotch area. Both rescuers are going to come in. They're going to bend up both legs and put the back of the victim's knees on their interior shoulders. They're going to reach down with their outside hands and grab the waist strap of the patient's pack. At that point, the individual on either side who's the control man for the webbing is going to make sure he's got that webbing in his hand. They're going to stand straight up, which is going to invert the victim, and then drive forward, which is going to flip the victim. The victim in this application is coming out feet first, belly down. As soon as the victim is on the sill and his feet are out of the window, the rescuer who is not controlling the webbing is going to work to get his torso articulated up and push him out of the window. Before we launch him out of that window, the control man has to verbalize that he's got the webbing in such a position that it's locked down over the 2 friction contact points of the windowsill, and he's in a good body mechanic position to drive that to the ground and control lowering that victim to the deck. Now, we're going to make sure at this point that it's not wrapped around the victim's legs, so we've got to get that webbing positioned such that it's free and it's not going to flip the victim around any further. As soon as it's free from around the victim's leg, which we can often accommodate just by pivoting the victim to one side or the other. When we've got it in a good control point, we're going to be ready to anchor that down against the wall, and we're going to take the victim on out of the window.
Ready? Ready.
This rescuer has complete control of the victim's body position. He's allowing these 2 friction points to, in a very controlled fashion, lower that victim down to the ground.